Hey everyone, so this is part two of the conversation that I had with Fitz over at Fitz's Electric Bar. Um, we talked for quite a while, so long that we had to split it into two different parts. And actually, we had a conversation before the conversation that didn't get recorded. So it's quite natural to talk to him. I think we're going to be doing more of this kind of thing. But this is part two of the conversation. If you haven't seen the first part, you can always go back and watch that. I'll have a link below. This part, the second part, we get into more of showing records, talking about records, and just kind of picking things that we've been listening to lately or that have been really impressing us. And then we also, of course, just kind of have a general conversation again as well. So enjoy.
Okay, so now we're going to do part two, and there isn't necessarily themes to the part two, but I think we were going to do some sharing of records. So why don't you
Yeah.
kick it off?
Sure. This is one that I mentioned in our previous video that we talked about, but I still want to mention it because well, it's a damn fine record, and that's what this is all about. This is Mississippi John Hurt today. I believe this was recorded in the early 60s. Um, he had been playing for a long time, blues guy. Does acoustic blues. I've realized recently that I like my girlfriend told me it's like acoustic blues versus electric blues, and I realized that I acoustic blues is probably my key to like really appreciating the blues more. This is so delicate. He's got such a delicate voice. It's just kind of like a whisper in a way, you know. It's I don't know. It's a great like Sunday morning record. There's a song on here called Coffee Blues. If you have not heard it, it's like his he's singing about Maxwell House coffee and how much he loves Maxwell House coffee. And he calls either it or the girl that's making it his loving spoonful. But he goes out of his way to get that Maxwell House coffee. And it's hilarious every time you hear it. And I mean, the whole album is great, but that's definitely a highlight. Might be I don't know. Are there other songs from that era that have like such blatant product placement, even though, of course, he wasn't getting paid for it? But yeah, it's a great album. Mississippi John heard today.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you introduced that because I also struggle a little bit with the blues as a genre and often not something that really connect with. And I often joke that it's not in my DNA in a sense, you know. But it was funny because after that, I use Tidal as a streaming
Hmm.
service. And sometimes you know how you put an artist name in there and sometimes it needs to include something else to be able to get another option. But the only record that was in his file, basically under his name, was that one.
Oh, okay.
So I wonder whether, yeah, it just didn't get
You
a.
know, I was asking my girlfriend about that because she's into the blues way more than I am. And I was like, is this like a Robert Johnson kind of thing where he just had like a batch of songs and it's available on like one or two records? And she thought that was probably true, that there weren't like
Hmm,
there's not a huge rich catalog. There's probably a few titles,
hmm,
if that, but yeah.
cool. Thanks for sharing. And I look
Sure.
forward to listening to that too, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. What do you got?
Well, I was just thinking like one of the things that I often do in my channel is like what's in my pile, which is the stuff that just is collected in front of my stereo. Usually if I'm
Such a cool
sort
idea.
yeah, well when you can sort of cycle stuff through, you go like I'm not listening to that anymore and put it away, then you really get a sense of what you're really playing in the moment. Because I don't tend to go back into the cabinet as it were, or the shelves to find stuff that often. I'm surprised, but I think partly because I'm constantly getting new music, and so I'm always listening to something. When I say new, I mean buying records, old
Yeah.
or new. Um, this one I'm kind of excited about. Do you know this one? So this is so yeah, it's a little hard to see, but it's is this all reversed for you or is it the right way?
No, no. Oh, Givens. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I'm not
you
familiar with that.
don't know if
No.
you're a Portishead fan, but you probably know
I
Beth.
do like Portishead and didn't yeah, I do like Portishead. I definitely like her voice.
And she was in another project. I forget what it was called, Rusted or something had Rust in it, I think. I can't remember what the name was. I don't know her intimately, but I was drawn to this because of Henrik Gorecki. So he's sort of a modern classical composer. I'm not exactly sure what era. Um, he may be like Arva Part and that kind of era, but this this piece of music I've been into. I was trying to find the CD in my collection because I've been listening to it for years. It's Symphony Number 3, and it's the name of it is Symphony of Sorrowful Songs. So this would really fit well in the Sad Bastard vinyl tag.
Yeah, wow.
It's it starts off really, really quiet and some beautiful kind of like strings, and there's a tension built. And then there's just this beautiful operatic vocals that come in, and it's so plaintive. And, I don't know what the words are. I just got this, so I've been streaming it, and I decided to get it. I wanted to get the classical sort of version, but this is ultimately with the Polish National Radio Symphony Orchestra. I believe the lyrics are in Polish, but I don't know exactly what. But it falls in that camp of I don't know what she's singing about or the vocalist is singing about, but it is full of pain. Like, it's just
Yeah, yeah.
you feel it and you don't know what the hell the lyrics are. It in a sense doesn't matter, although I'm looking forward to it. But Beth Gibbons apparently spent a lot of time learning Polish before she sang this, and I believe she sings it in Polish
Wow.
to bring kind of that level of authenticity to the
That's amazing.
performance.
Wow. Very cool.
So I'm looking forward, I'm really looking forward to really listening to this on vinyl. I think it should be a really great experience.
I'm gonna check that out. There's another classical artist, Satay. Is that who it? Satay?
Oh
Satie?
no. Oh,
You've played
Eric
it.
Satie.
Satie.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that record, you showed it. I'm like, oh my God, I love this guy. I always forget about him. That one song, I don't know, his music comes on and it's like it stops me in my tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seemed like he had a really good vinyl copy. And I was like, that's what I need to get. Try finding a single version of something and I mean, he's had probably hundreds of people putting out albums of
Yeah.
his stuff. So I was like, I couldn't find that exact one. I still want to get something on vinyl, but I have streamed various, I guess, versions of that. And just, yeah, I do love that. Yeah.
It's got such a beautiful tone to it or whatever. And, we had our grandkids here in the summer. They live in Japan. And, my granddaughter just sort of went, "Oh, I love this music," and she's like
It's so cool.
17, it's just like,
Yeah.
it just seems to really hit people.
I grabbed another modern, I guess, classical record to talk about.
Yeah.
Nils Fromm. Now, this I don't like everything he does, and I've certainly have not heard everything he does. But I got this through Vinyl Me Please back in, I don't know, 2015, and it really floored me. I mean, it sounds so good. It's a live record. It's really intimate sounding. Um, Sounds very organic to me. I know like some of his stuff can be more electronic, but yeah, I really love this record.
I know of him. He's one of those artists that's done the last late night tales thing that I've
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
put.
Yeah.
So he is I mean, he has a great appreciation of music in addition to being a composer and player himself. But um, and I think I've got like at least that one of his that is a really good one. I mean, all those late night tales are really great. Those sort of compilations of late night music, and
Hmm.
his has got some sort of modern classical stuff on it as well. Well, that's
Yeah.
cool. I'll
Yeah.
have to give that a listen.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. It's really, yeah, it's yeah. Have a hard time talking about classical, but it's very good. Yeah. What
Yeah.
else you got?
I don't know. Do you know Richard Hawley at all?
You know, I do. We were at Mazzy's place not that long ago, a couple months ago, and it was after his trip to London, and somebody had given him a record
Yeah.
by that artist, and we were all like, "Wow, this is great!" Yeah, I don't think he's as big here as he is in the UK and probably Canada, but
Mm.
that record, maybe it's the same one. But I loved it, and I definitely want to hear more of his stuff for sure.
This was the one that, and I don't go deep on his catalog, but this one, I don't know if that's the one, but it's called Cole's Corner.
I don't
And
think that's the
so
one.
here is an example. I wanted to get this on vinyl, and they're just not available. I mean, when I
Uh,
say not available, they might be available for 100 plus or whatever, but no, I'm gonna
yeah.
And it's got to be re-released at some point in time. But my God, his voice, it's so rich. It's so beautiful. It's so perfect in terms of the melancholia, like with the strings and everything, that I simultaneously, I'm like deeply moved and I want to like burst out laughing, because it's so over the top, and yet he does it in such a sincere fashion that you really believe it and feel it, And the things are, about driving to the ocean and meeting somebody you love at Cole's Corner, like right outside the Cole's shop, the Cole's,
Oh, wow. Okay. I
and
was,
it's
huh.
just it's so good, but it's so sort of like almost cliche that you can't help laugh while still having tears in your eyes, It's amazing. And this, I think, I mean, you know how it is with artists. So this is a greatest hits, and this is a double. And the plus part of it, of course, is it's a great sampler of his music. And you can get an idea of all the different stuff he does. And it's not all just like these beautiful sort of like torch ballad songs. Some of them are really rockin' stuff, not just that melancholy stuff. And so you get a good sense of that with this. But the downside of this compared to I would prefer this over this because this has consistency all the way through it. It's such a beautiful record, and from beginning to end, it's just gorgeous. And this sort of jumps around. It's nice as a sampler, but it's not as satisfying as a listen.
Definitely gonna check that out. Yeah, and I'll send you a message if I can figure out what the one we were listening to that
Yeah,
that's all the way too. Um, yeah, I've got one to show here. I guess grabbed a few. But
good.
this is Terry Allen. You familiar with Terry Allen?
No, not at all.
I wasn't either. Chris from the Long Cut came to visit us right around Christmas, right after Christmas, and he gave the archivist and I this record, and it's like it's a country record. He's a singer-songwriter kind of country guy. He's also a visual artist. Like he did the cover. I think
Oh,
he's photography's his thing. Um, and sculpture, I believe, too. But it's called Lubbock, Texas, Lubbock on everything. And he's from Lubbock. I hope I'm saying that right. I
mm,
wasn't saying it right the other day. He's from Lubbock, Texas, but he was living, I think, in the Bay Area and other places for quite a while when he decided to make a record about that city and about his experience growing up there. And he went back to Lubbock, Texas, and recorded this record in that city. And it's like, it definitely has that kind of country sound, like mid 70s, early 70s. I think this might be like 72 or something like that. But it's humorous too. I mean, he's telling like over the top, sort of non-PC stories about characters in Texas, And also there's some tender moments. It's a quite a long record. I mean, it's a double record. Just to go over some song titles. I mean, there's one, The Great Joe Bob, a regional tragedy, talks about this football player who ends up, I think he's a bank robber or something like that. He gets in all this trouble. Stuff that might have been grabbed straight out of the headlines. But the other thing that is so nice about this record, it's such a good version, whatever this is. Put the label closer so anybody wants to freeze it and look at it.
yeah.
But it's an amazing package. It has all the lyrics and has this huge booklet that essays on him, biographical information, his artwork. It's just a really, really nice package. So yeah, I've been digging this. It's not the most easily digestible material, but I've listened to it between two speakers a couple times now, and yeah, it's one of those I kind of can't get enough of. So yeah, thanks again to the long cut for this record. But
That's
yeah,
great. I was
Terry
going to
Allen.
jot it down on a piece of paper, but I'll be going through this video again to make sure I
Oh
get
yeah.
everything that you recommend because I literally build playlists often with just like your recommendations. And then when I get around to it, I listen to it. So,
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
yeah. One of the problems for me streaming, going back to the platform you listen to, is that sometimes I'm just too distracted to really give it a proper listen. And I feel like some things just don't get a fair shake when I'm listening to it that way. But alternative to that is making an investment and committing to something that you may or may not really love.
Totally, totally. I mean, part of the issue I have with streaming is that it gets lost. I'll like heart something. I use Apple Music because it's lossless. I used and I've never used Spotify. I hate Spotify. I've used Tidal, like you say, use that. I like that too because it's lossless. It sounds
Yeah.
really good. But yeah, I save things like to my library, but I was trying to look up that classical musician we were just talking about, and I was kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling because I was sure I marked it somewhere. But yeah, the physicality of vinyl's nice or CDs,
Yeah,
because you're reminded of things. You see it on the shelf, of course, and you remember to play it. So
totally. Thanks for sharing that one. That's really cool.
yeah,
I'm looking
absolutely.
forward to checking that out. Um, Were you ever, I don't know why I grabbed this one, but I thought that you either know it and probably really love it, or maybe don't know it and it might be a good recommendation. But are you familiar with, I'm drawing a blank now. So Jason Molina,
Yeah.
and this record, yeah, Magnolia Electric Company. I keep forgetting about his incarnation, but this record, Josephine,
Yeah, the archivist has that. I should dig that one out. Yeah, I don't know that one really well. I know the one before it pretty well.
Sojourners one, the
The
box.
one Magnolia Electric Company, like the might be sort of self-titled. I think it was the first one he did under
Right.
Magnolia Electric Company.
I got the Sojourners one, which is I think four records recorded in different locations, and I'm still sort of trying to absorb that. I I find he's rough around the edges in the best possible way and really beautiful in other ways. And the song that I would recommend just to give a quick listen and see if it really grabs you is Little Sad Eyes. Just some beautiful organ work, and the production is just staggering. It's so good. So. Yeah, he's somebody that kind of when I think about being in certain kinds of moods, and if I'm in a Neil Young mood, but I'm not really into hearing Neil Young in that moment,
Yeah,
I might
yeah.
grab this.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see him live or them live
Did
in a
you?
really small place. And yeah, it really brought out that kind of Neil Young sort of guitar work. And I think that first record that came out, whatever it was called, and it was quite different than what I'd heard before in like Songs of Haya, his
Yeah,
earlier. So yeah, definitely love that era.
yeah,
I'll have
yeah,
to listen to that one and I'll queue up that song in
yeah.
particular.
Little
Yeah.
sad eyes. Your turn.
I mentioned this one last time, but I definitely want to mention it again. I might do a full video on it. This is a band that's been around since the early 90s. Unfortunately, one of their members has passed away, then and it pretty much ended the band. It's a band Low, and this is their last album called Double Negative. Uh, no, it's the one before it's called Double Negative. This one's called Hey What. So why am I talking about this record? I think sometimes, a band, your favorite band or whatever, puts out a record, you buy it, you give it a couple listens, and you're like, okay, it's pretty good, or maybe you really like it, but then it gets put aside. For me, um, even though I loved sort of the experimentation of this record, I find it to be so dark, and I find the digital distortion to be too much. You can't hear the lyrics. You don't know what he's talking about. A really similar example is his new record, Alan Sparhawk. Um, where he's just using the vocoder to such a degree you can't understand. I have a hard time understanding much of anything, and I'm annoyed by the whole thing, the sound of it. But this album, I pulled it off the shelf a couple weeks ago, and I just keep listening to it. I even listened to it in the car recently when I had a road trip up to Spokane, Washington. There's you can understand everything, but like with repeat listens, it's like all the pieces just go together so well, and there's so much kind of menacing sort of guitar and I guess I don't even know what it is half the time, but it almost sounds like a glacier coming towards you. This and in the road noise of driving in a car blended so perfectly with this. I didn't even know what I was playing versus what was actually happening to me and driving a car, real life. Um, but the songs are really tight on this. I think they get into religion a little bit. They get into their relationship, and I also think that there's some songs on here that it's almost like they're ready to say goodbye or they're having a hard time saying goodbye. They know that Mimi is sick and that she's going to pass away at some point. The key difference too that I find really interesting, and I probably, if I do a standalone video on this, I'll research it a little bit more. But there were edits made to the vinyl to get it to fit, I guess, on two sides and not make it a triple or whatever. I don't think it's a length issue. I think maybe the songs, some of them just wouldn't fit, wouldn't be a nice split. And they ended up trimming at least one song, maybe two. And I feel like it's better for it. When I listen to it in the car, there's some moments of this distortion or just repetition that get really, really, really tiring to the point where if it was the version that I had on vinyl, I would probably wouldn't be able to play it. So digital or vinyl is definitely the way to go on this one for sure. But give it a shot if you haven't. It's a great low record. It's really amazing how far they've come, from being the quietest band. I mean, I worked for their label when they first started, and I'm not exaggerating one bit when I say that when you see an early low show, you're creating a noise disturbance just reaching for the change in your pocket to like back when we paid with change in our pocket to order a drink, or talk to the bartender. It was that quiet. And now you've got this like noise record, but using noise, I think, in one of the best ways possible. So,
Well, I've got things to sort of tie onto that. So I have that record. I am a big Low fan. I'm not maybe a completist. I don't have the negative one. But I bought it. The guy in the record store whose taste I really, the owner of the record store, local record store, highly recommended it. I came home, I played it once or twice, and I kind of went, I'm not so sure. And I filed it away. And you've reminded me to pull it out and really give it a good listen again. And I mentioned to you last time, and the thing that didn't we didn't record, I saw that tour, and it was really interesting because you walked in, there was a screen, and they had a lot of white noise being projected onto the screen, and some, I guess, like neon or fluorescent tubes that reminded me a little bit of David Bowie's Stage. I don't know if you know that one where they had all these lights that are kind of like all
yeah,
parallel and
yeah.
stuff. But it reminded me of that, and it was an onslaught. And at first I was kind of, this isn't the Low I know. And but it was like just washed over by the sound. And I was just skiing the other day with a friend, and he was talking about how much he loved that show, and I was thinking as well how much I enjoyed it and how completely different it was from the first time I saw them, which was right when Things We Lost in the Fire came out, and Cat Power opened, and then Low played. It was in Seattle. It was during Bumbershoot and the Mercer
Oh, wow.
Center. And the opening of that show was, do you know the Low with the Dirty Three, that recording in the fish tank?
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
they do a
actually,
cover?
I'm not familiar with that one. I know of it, but I
Okay.
actually haven't heard it.
So I think it's available on the streaming platforms. They do a version of Down by the River.
Oh, wow.
And it
Wow.
it the intro, it's just it's just like, and there's like 3 minutes before you even get any chords happening. And I love it. Like I just love the way they do it. I mean, it's kind of true to it, but you've got Mimi and Alan singing together. It's magical.
Oh,
We went to
yeah, they could be magical for
oh
sure.
the way we talked about that before, the way they sang together is like
Hmm.
unlike anything, right? I mean,
Yeah,
she's
and
got a
what you
haunt
said
to
about washing over you, that's how I feel about this record too. I keep thinking it's very visual, like I said, menacing, but like waves, ocean, energy, big, like a glacier coming towards you. There's so much interesting textures on this record, and yeah, it plays all the way through like that. Of course, there's moments of incredible beauty that sort of interrupt it, and then goes back into more of the noisier elements.
it. Yeah. I'm going to give it a good listen. But I just remember when I saw them, they came out and they just had a child, or the child was just old enough to kind of come out and just sort of run around and then fall down or
Oh
whatever. And
yeah.
they
Yeah.
came out, and this child ran out on stage, and they weren't freaking out. It was just kind of like the child was kind of just like running around. And I think it was their child. And
Yeah.
they were playing Down by the River. And I remember thinking they were just like making really quiet sounds. It could have been anything by them. But then I went, oh my God, they're doing it. They're doing Down by the River. And it was so good. And it was like the first song of the set. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I miss them. I tried to see them. I'm trying to remember if it was in Seattle. I don't think, no, it was in San Francisco about, I don't know, 5 years ago. I think it was on the Double Negative tour, and I really wanted to see them. I'd never seen him outside Minneapolis, and I saw him several times in Minneapolis, but I tried to see him in San Francisco, and I forget who was opening up for them. But I got there and I'm like, hey, did loading go on yet? Did they? Because I thought I heard them. They're like, oh, they're just finishing up. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, the headliner asked if they could go first this time. What? Because there's some conflict. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah,
That's
so I
awful.
never, yeah, I never
Yeah.
see that last time, but
So an artist that I have grown to, I mean, I've loved this guy for ages, but there's a little story with this. So it's David Sylvian, and I had Adolescent Sex, I think that was the first Japan record, but
I thought you were confessing
I
to
know I
something.
had Adolescent Sex. I really don't cancel me, YouTube. Um,
Yeah.
didn't we all have adolescent sex? Um, And but I never really got into Japan. And everyone would say like Tin Drum is amazing and Quiet Life and all this kind of stuff. And I just couldn't do it. But sort of around the late 80s or I guess when this came out, but Gone to Earth and in my pot smoking days, I would put this on at night, I'd smoke a joint and I'd fall asleep to this record. And what I did was I got it on CD as well and just let the whole thing run through. And this to me, a lot of the instrumental stuff I just absolutely loved, and it didn't have what I would consider to be some of the affectation that I felt like Japan had. It was just a little too, that kind of stuff. But the other record that came out that just turned me into a huge David Sylvian fan is this one. So Secrets of the Beehive. And this is beautiful. And again, if you're wanting to see if this is your cup of tea, the first song,
Yeah, wow.
September. Is it September? Yeah, September. It's just like this is a fall record of the first order, and it sounds like it looks, I mean, that's got kind of a 4AD type cover, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it looks really intriguing.
I love this record, and I keep going back because I've there's a record he did with Robert Fripp, which is really good. There's his solo stuff. There's just so much good stuff, and I just got this, which is a great compilation. And Mazzy, I learned of this from Mazzy. This was out on CD, I guess, but this is a triple record and it covers his whole solo career. There's a little bit of Japan in here, but mostly it's his solo stuff. And he's done such great stuff. Of course, he worked with Ryuichi Sakamoto on things, and there's this Stina Nordstrom as this vocalist from I don't know one of the Scandinavian countries. I think she's got a very unique voice, and really like it. And then there's some stuff that was from some of these albums that, like Secrets of the Beehive, that they didn't have budget to complete. So there's sort of like tracks that they completed later, but it's from those recordings. So
That's
this
cool.
one here is
Wow.
called Everything and Nothing. But um, again, the whole thing about a compilation is that it doesn't do justice of the artist in the way that they put out records the way that they're intended to be consumed, but it's a great primer and there's so much good music on here. And it's nice because a lot of my stuff of Sylvian's, like Rain Tree Crow, which I love as well, is on CD. So I now have some of that on vinyl, which is nice.
That's cool. Yeah, I need to sit down with one of his records. I think I probably listen to tracks here and there. I'm certainly familiar with the name, but I
Well,
really,
here's one warning, a piece of warning, and this is an opinion, as all of these things are, but um, this was a record that Mazzy absolutely loves, and he's talked about it quite a few times. And I thought, I really trust Mazzy's taste. I mean, I find that there's really very little that he steers me wrong on in terms of shared interests. But he loves this record, and this is one I just cannot get into. It's a little too esoteric, a little bit too beat like fuzz beep beep blah, stuff. It just feels a bit cold. And then in fact,
uh,
in a different way, that's what I don't like about Japan. And yet I do feel like some of his music has got a coolness to it that I actually like. So I don't know where the dividing line is. Sometimes stuff can be just a little too cold for me, and sometimes that sort of colder, distant. and melancholic thing is exactly what I love. And that's what I kind of find I'm trying to figure out with David Sylvian. And I keep going, I've got to try to find a way into this. And I've got to find a way to really understand Japan because I truly believe it's my weakness.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Like sometimes, yeah, the electronic stuff or just the coldness of things, sometimes it really works, and other times it just sounds like really, yeah, inorganic or something. There's
Yeah.
something, yeah, I hear you. I have more, I want to show a couple, but more like I want to ask you about this artist.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just kind of getting into him. Um, I read Peter Jesperson's book. Do you know Peter Jesperson?
The
Replacements? Of course you do.
manager. Yeah. Replacements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he mentioned Daniel Romano
Yeah.
and Moisey, I think, was the record that Mossey, I think, that he recommended. And I listened to it, I streamed it quite a bit, and I liked it. And here's a guy who's just got an immense catalog. Well, the other day there was some kind of vinyl sale, and I ended up getting two of his records. And I find that they're really starting to click with me. I like the new one too. I think I put that on my
Yeah.
mention best of. But this one, I
A
tend
lot
to
of
really
pressure.
like a lot, and I feel like I'm just starting to get into this one.
I really like that one, the how thy world is ordered. Yeah.
Okay. So tell
Um,
me more about them. Like, how do these two records fit in? Are these were these good choices to start with,
well
other
then,
than like hearing the new one a little bit?
yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate being asked about this because my friends kind of this one friend of mine just keeps when I talk about Daniel Romano, he goes, "You mean that guy from Hamilton?" I go, "No, it's Welland, Ontario." But he teases me about, the where he's from.
Yeah.
Um, I discovered him during the pandemic, and I think he put out like about 10 records over a year and a half or 2 years during the pandemic. I mean, insane and really different types of releases, sort of AOR stuff, pop stuff, kind of some prog stuff, some country stuff. And it all feels like he's very authentic in it. It's not just he's putting on a hat. He seems to be able to really embody it and really deliver authentic stuff. I like some of it more than others, but the one that got me in was um what's it called? The album I think is called Finally Free, and all the reach all the okay. I can't quite remember. I'm going to send you that sort of I'll send you the message of it. But it just absolutely blew me away. And that was one of my first intro. And I think it may have been an algorithm, probably listening to Velvet Underground or something. And then they sent this one. And I went, wow. And then I had a lot of time on my hands, as many of us did during that period.
Mhm.
And I started listening to his stuff and really loving it. The other one that you may know about is he and his band, The Outfit, did Bob Dylan's Infidels.
Like the Pugs, right? The
Yeah,
Plugs.
exactly. The LA band, The Pugs. Yeah.
It's funny. I saw that recently and I'd forgotten all about that, or I hadn't connected the two, that this same guy, because I'd heard that record 5 years ago, probably or a while ago. And I love, love, love that Letterman performance from
Yeah,
Dylan doing Joker Man. I don't think, I mean, he should have done the whole album like that. It's incredible.
absolutely.
And why that's not on the box set from that period is
Yeah.
frustrating to me to no end. But
Yeah.
um, I need to listen to that again. I remember being slightly annoyed by it or wasn't in the mood for it. But I need to go listen to that now that
Well,
I
I
know
mean,
it's
I
this guy.
yeah, I think he was coming at it from the same place that you and I were, which was simply like, what a great reimagining of those songs. And it actually
Mhm.
existed. And what if they had done that whole
Yeah,
album that
yeah,
way? I
yeah.
mean, it would have been a great punk record, right?
Totally, totally. Yeah.
So I got really into that, between all the reaching trim, I think it's called, and the what if, the doing infidels that way. And then I actually really love that How Ill Thy World Is Ordered, that second one you showed me. I don't know Modern Pressure as well. Yeah. I find that one, the more I listened to it, the more I liked it, and it's got a little bit more depth to it for my taste. I can't really comment on Modern Pressure because I have it, but it wasn't one that I've really dove in. In the course of the last 3.5 years, let's say mid-pandemic to now, I think I bought 12, maybe Daniel Romano records.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
haven't gone like as deep on all of them. I'd get really caught up in something and then I'd kind of forget about it. I was just kind of mindlessly buying them. They weren't that expensive, and I always got the sense they were small batch. So I thought I
Hmm.
need to own these, you know?
Totally, totally. Yeah, I'm trying to control myself a little bit and like really try to like learn these records first.
Yes,
But I part of me is just like a kid in a candy store with like streaming like, whoa, I should try to play this one and this one and then
absolutely.
So I was just kind of curious. Yeah, I know you've mentioned him a few
And I've
times.
seen him live a couple times, and he's a fun show. He basically does like a 50-minute set, and they don't even talk to the audience, and the songs all just go one after another, and it's like power pop of the first order. The rhythm section, in a some kind of way, reminds me of Keith Moon and John Entwistle, kind of who like,
Oh,
you know.
wow.
They're
Yeah.
really fun, really fun.
I remember the drumming on some of these records has really impressed me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's his brother.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
there's they're in lockstep, I think.
Yeah. No, really cool
Well,
stuff.
to be continued. I'd love to hear as you start to absorb more, and I'm happy to share other stuff because this country record I mentioned a couple times, but there's a song on it. It's called something like Sleepy Willow, but again, I can talk about that later. But there's a track on there called Nothing that I just think is literally Townes Van Zandt equal in terms of singer-songwriting. It's like it's so devastating and so powerful
Wow. Wow. Okay.
that I love it. So I got to do, I'm going to make my little notes here and what I'm going to send you. Um, and I'll just send you like in some fashion a link so that you can listen to them, see what you think.
That'd be great. Yeah, I love that.
That's another whole concept, for us doing this stuff will be, firing a song or two of an artist and then the other person kind of giving their thoughts on it or how they liked
That'd
it.
be really cool. Yeah.
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 I know
Yeah.
we've got 3 minutes, 35 seconds, I think, left. Um, what I mean, we've still got some time, so
Oh, well, I was going to ask you, what record, cassette, CD, whatever medium, but what release album do you think that you have listened to more than any other album? Played the most?
it's funny. You think about all these like listening patterns. Like when a Ramones album used to come out, I would play it like every day for like, 3 months, but I don't put Ramones on much anymore because I love it, but it's just not what I want to listen to most of the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um, do you know that guy who does All the World's a Stage? He has a spreadsheet. He tracks every album that he plays. Like this day, I played these albums, and he has a running spreadsheet that totals it up. I
Wow.
mean, I just, it makes me laugh. I can understand the obsessiveness, but it's too much. It, I don't know this empirically, but it's funny because I have this record here because I was just like, this is such a linchpin to my life in so many ways. This is Quadrophenia. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I. I just love this record. I love the concept. I love the film. I just thought it was so great. It came into my life when I was trying to figure out who I was, and that's exactly what Jimmy goes through here. And he's part mod, part rocker, you know. And I love I mean, the Real Me and Love Raynor Me. And, it's just like there's so much great music on here. And for my taste, I'm much more of a Quadrophenia person than Tommy. A lot of people are more of a Tommy, into the Tommy stuff. And I
Yeah.
love, I love Quadrophenia. So I would say that would be certainly one of the top that I've ever played because I still play it today. There's a lot of stuff back to the Ramones that I
I'm
played a
gonna reach
lot,
that
but I
out.
just
I'm gonna
don't
reach
put
for that
on.
one, pull it out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
I think there's three probably, and they all came out kind of in the same period within a few years of each other. It'd be REM's Document, wore that print right off the cassette, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, and Jane's Addiction's Nothing Shocking. Those are probably one of those three is probably the one that I've played more than any other, and I really only listen to the REM record somewhat regularly of those three. Yeah.
That's interesting. I think I missed a big chunk of music between 90 and 95 when I was living in Japan. I was aware of Jane's Addiction, but I didn't know their music, and it's just not something that I've gone back and really explored. I saw
It's kind of hard to
Pornos
go
for
back.
Pyros once, and it just really didn't do it for me.
And not the
Unfortunately,
same.
that spoiled it for me.
Well, it looks like we're really got less than a minute, so this has been really fun. Let's do this again.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
well, why don't we wrap this up and then you and I talk a little bit about well, we're doing it again.
Yeah, let's do that. Sounds
Okay,
great. Thank
thanks,
you.
Todd. It was great. Cheers.